All right, we can get started. Welcome to our day 4 in the final session of our Martin Luther King Jr. week-long events. This has been an exciting and powerful week of enlightening sessions, starting with our kickoff session of understanding why our community is so essential, our health and well-being in response to the pandemic, economic opportunity, and just ensuring that our community has access and opportunity for financial security, and then summing up tonight with our conversation on having a vibrant community. So moments of change and complexity are also moments when the power of a community can be a time of growth, but it takes practice and intention to create this type of community and environment that can be adaptable and resilient in these times of need. So in tonight's conversation, we will to consider how we move from awareness to action to achieve Dr. King's dream of an economic justice as a community. So I will start with introductions by going first, and then we'll have our panelists introduce themselves and provide a brief bio. My name is Felicia Williams, and I am the manager of HR consulting at CUNA Mutual Group, and I will serve as the moderator tonight. So if we could just start with Felicia, if you can introduce yourself, and then I'll just go to the next person and have them introduce themselves after that.
Good evening. I am Felicia Smith Knowles. I am the Neighborhood Services Coordinator with the City of Waterloo, and I'm the ED for the North End Arts and Culture Center.
Should probably take myself off mute. Brad, we'll go to you next.
All right, good evening. Yeah, I'm Brad McCalla, and I am the director of a small nonprofit in Waterloo called Success Link. Real quickly, kind of what we do 3 really unrelated things. The first is that we are the umbrella agency over the Success Street sites, which are the school-based student health clinics that we've got in Waterloo and Cedar Falls. So if students need any different types of services, they can get it right there in the school. Actually, we've got also the student health clinic at Hawkeye Community College is underneath Success Link. We're also the data repository. We've got a large data system that we run with all of the youth serving agencies so that we can track and report back on how students are doing within, say, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, those types of nonprofits that work with youth. And then we're also the fiscal agent for a lot of different community initiatives, meaning a lot of great ideas out there, but those ideas need back-end support in terms of financing and HR support and those types of things. So Success Link has stepped into that role for almost about a dozen different entities within the community. And I'll talk a little bit more about how that works later. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Todd, we'll go to you next.
Hello, everybody. Todd Holcomb. I'm president of Hawkeye Community College. A little bit about myself. I graduated from Tipton High School in Tipton, Iowa. Went away to Missouri for my undergraduate at Truman State University, and then on to Texas Tech for my master's and University of Georgia for my doctorate. Spent 25 years of my life in 4-year college administration, and then decided to make a switch to community colleges because I felt like they were where it was at with college and training and education and jobs. So the last 11, 12 years, I've been in community colleges and excited to be the new president. I've been at Hawkeye about 18 months. So it's exciting to be here in Waterloo and serving the communities.
All right, and last but not least, David.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm David Deeds. I am the Chief Financial Officer for JSA Development. We own and operate and rehabilitate buildings in downtown Waterloo primarily. Almost all what we call historic rehabs, meaning we're taking buildings that are often 100, 120 years old and bringing them back to good economic use. I also am probably somewhat also related to tonight's topic is I am the current, in a volunteer role, the current board president for Iowa Heartland Habitat for Humanity. And I've been involved with Habitat for the last 6 years. And prior to that, sometime back in the mid 2000s, was involved. but our organization is very involved in the Walnut Neighborhood Revitalization Project. JSA is also part of that effort. And so I appreciate the opportunity to come talk about what we do and be part of this panel.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for your introductions and all the work that you do in our communities. So let's just dig right into the questions, because I know that's what the people are here for. So Dr. Martin Luther King really popularized the notion of this idea of a beloved, vibrant community, and envisioning a community that is one that's based on justice, equal opportunity, and the love for one's fellow human being. So in your respective fields, what makes a vibrant community, and how does your organization play a role in making the Cedar Valley vibrant, using the theme of Dr. King's dream? So let's start with Todd.
In my thinking about a vibrant community and how Hawkeye Community College contributes to that, there's many aspects involved with our college that people are not aware of. For example, we're about a mid-sized community college for the state of Iowa. We have somewhere between the 5th and 6th largest enrollment of any community college in the state, but we're almost 50% liberal arts transfer, which you would say a traditional college education, and then 50% CTE, career technical education students that are specifically going into career areas such as healthcare, career areas associated with IT, or even our industrial automation area. So we see that as a 50-50 blend of what we're able to provide. But then Hawkeye Community College is so much more than that, because we provide a lot of short-term certificates and training to people. And matter of fact, coming out of the pandemic, in a national survey, about 60% of all potential students say that they want short-term, non-credit credentials and training that lead to jobs. And so we're a pathway, we're an entryway into economic inclusion, which I believe is a collaboration with people of color, and making sure that there's not only race, but there's class inclusion. And so Hawkeye Community College is kind of that entryway into that. We also, before the pandemic, had over 800 students attending our Adult Learning Center in downtown Waterloo. And there were 46 different languages that were spoken there. So we are really an international cultural opportunity for students to succeed and to realize their goals and dreams. It's access, it's opportunity, it's economic vitality for our region. And we see Hawkeye Community College as being an integral part to helping people achieve their dreams. It doesn't matter what race you are. What I often hear from people is that I'd like to have a good job. I'd like to make a difference in my community. I'd like to have a house. I'd like to have good educational opportunities for my children. That transcends any race that we have in our community here. And I think Hawkeye Community College can be a vibrant part of that moving forward.
Thank you, Todd. Felicia, would you want to go next?
Absolutely. COVID really shed light on things that we were falling short on. But as far as neighborhoods, it's been an exciting time. Seeing people figure out ways to still connect. And it's through that connection that we build community. When it comes to the time of year as well, in neighborhoods, election years are a hard time, because it's that time when you have yard signs out and it lets folks know where you stand. And so I'm excited that now that's passed, we've had people planning for this spring and this summer. our partnership with Gallagher Bluedorn, they're going to be bringing Gallagher shows to neighborhoods. And I think that just exposing people that may never get those opportunities to go to Gallagher Bluedorn and see a show, that's a great opportunity. I feel that Dr. King's message of coming together is also met with the North End Music and Arts Festival, which we couldn't have last summer, but this summer is going to be it gives people voice. And in order to feel like you're a part of a community and that you have value in it, people need to have voice. And I'm very proud of the work that North End does to make sure that our local artists not only get their voice, but have a platform to express that. And that platform too is built with neighborhood services, where residents that may not feel they have access to the city, to city leadership, to city council, that they have voice too. So I feel like through both of the organizations, the piece of being a contributing and a heard voice in what seems like a very noisy world, that I see you moment, the recognition of being a part of something bigger than you. I think all of those activities show the life and legacy of Dr. King.
Yes, that's awesome. Just hearing so far what you and Todd have shared about creating that access and opportunity, having those, I like how you termed it, those ICU moments to make people feel connected to our communities. That's really great. David, do you want to share kind of what your thoughts are about vibrant communities and connecting it to Dr. King's dream?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm going to connect the JSA, my JSA job, as well as my role with Habitat. Kind of roll back about four or 5 years at this point. Habitat, along with Link, which is Laura Hoy, Georgia Judy Marshall, and others, of course, who've been involved in the Walnut neighborhood for a long time, over 10 years at this point, who've done a lot of great things in the neighborhood, who've helped connect people and bridge the community, brought together the neighborhood for essentially what it amounted to was a strengths, weakness, opportunity, and threat analysis, right? So the opportunity was on 2 different Saturdays. I participated as part of JSA. Habitat was at the table. The neighborhood was at the table, and city had representation there as well. And what excited me about that was that you had everybody's voices around the table and everybody saying, you know, what are the strengths of our neighborhood? What are the weaknesses? What are our opportunities? And what are our threats? And some really good points came out of that conversation. And but what that then led to where we went next with the organization, which is the Walnut Neighborhood Housing Coalition, which has really got a little broader than that at this point. But we worked with the city to create a memorandum of understanding of what our efforts collectively would be in the Walnut neighborhood. You know, because the Walnut neighborhood, if you're not familiar with it, it's an area, it's north of Franklin. It's bounded by Franklin, East 4th Street, Dane, and Highway 63. It's a fairly easily defined area. It's a very old neighborhood in terms of its physical structure. Part of it's part of the original plat of the city. And it had been, you know, it had seen massive amounts of disinvestment, demolition ever since probably the 50s into the 60s, certainly. And the neighborhood, the people that were still there cared deeply about the neighborhood. And that was an opportunity for us to kind of come together as different organizations who had different stakes, different perhaps motivations in sometimes, but ultimately all wanted to come together, work together to make that neighborhood, help make that neighborhood a livable place, right? A place that people wanted to be at. And I think that's part of the vibrancy of a community, is if you have neighborhoods where people want to live, right? There's the variation on the saying that you want people to choose your neighborhood, not feel like the neighborhood is forced upon them, right? Or some variation of that, right? That they want to be there. And obviously the people that lived in the neighborhood at the start of this wanted to be there, or many of them, I believe. But that created an opportunity for us to work together, and we're still working on it. It's very much a work in progress. But to the point of economic justice, one of the key components of it is collectively the vision is for what I'll call a mixed income neighborhood, right? One of the things I think in some of Dr. King's speeches and writings are that we're too separated, right? That these people live here and these people live here, and we're all in different places. But when we create opportunities for people to be in the same place, interact with each other, that helps bridge gaps, as Felicia mentioned earlier. So anyway, before I go on too long here, my point is that we are working actively as a collaboration with the neighborhood and people who have worked in the neighborhood. Habitat, which is creating home ownership opportunities, because part of economic justice is wealth creation for the individuals in the community. Home ownership is a key part of that, obviously. And then as JSA, we are bringing in a component where we're preserving some of the history by creating good housing in existing houses, while all creating opportunities for people who already lived in the neighborhood to remain in the neighborhood, right? So this isn't about displacing people. This is about bringing new folks into the community and trying to knit the community, that neighborhood together. So I'll stop there. I could go on for a long, long time about that. But
No, thank you. Brad, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, what all three of them said. I looked at the question a little differently. I took it from, obviously my scope is from the nonprofit human services world. And I looked at it because I truly believe Waterloo is a vibrant community. And so I looked at it from, what have I seen in the community? I've been here almost 30 years. What has happened in that 30 years that has made it, how has it gotten it from where it was to where it is now? And the word is vibrant. And when I look back on that, the things that I see, the words that popped into my head first were trust, especially in the nonprofit world. There's a high level of trust that's needed to make a vibrant community and keep it a vibrant community. And that I've found, I've worked side by side with so many people for almost 30 years. There hasn't been a lot of turnover, because these people that I work with are really truly invested in the community, and want to be here and help make it better into the next level. The next word that really came to my mind was time. I look back on, there was a plan, 2020. That was probably 30 years ago when that plan was first developed. And 2020 just seemed like forever ago. And here we are, we're already past it. But my point with that is that it was intentional. They knew where they wanted to go as a community, and they laid it out on paper, and they revisited it every single year. Let's keep coming back to that plan. Where are we? And just making that circle of evaluation to making sure that we're still on track with where we wanted to be. The next thought that came to my mind was that it really needs to be nurtured and cultivated. That you can't, if you don't take care of it, just like any living thing, it will die. And I've seen the community really begin to take care of itself even better every single year, taking care of itself. From the nonprofit, especially in the nonprofit world, I see such a high level of collaboration, and everybody uses that word. We collaborate with this, we collaborate with that. I've worked with many, many communities across Iowa, and honestly, I've never seen true collaboration occur like it does in Waterloo. Most are just working side by side. Collaboration happens when there's a sacrifice that's made, to serve the better good, the greater good for your own good. you moved beyond yourself and are working with the whole community. And I see that's where in Dr. King's vision, it was much larger than yourself. And I see that so often in the agencies and the people that I work with. And lastly, Dr. King's message was contagious. I mean, it's still contagious. We still keep, every year we come to it, and it's been embedded in so much of what we do. And so I think that's part of what takes or makes a vibrant community, is that contagious feeling to keep moving forward with it, because you see what's happening and it all of a sudden it catches on. We see it in the neighborhoods. When neighborhoods begin to evolve and move forward, it catches on and others move with it.
Thank you. In keeping with the theme of realizing Dr. King's dream, and seeing how the pandemic has really changed the way we live, work, and survive, how did your company make any major changes in the response to COVID? And has there been changes in meeting new equity goals? So we'll start with Felicia.
Well, Zoom has become a new thing that I'm getting comfortable with, because I'm meeting a lot on this. And as much as we jest about some of our overuse of Zoom, I've realized that it has provided access to a lot of people, a lot of folks that couldn't make a physical meeting because of kids or things at home or other obligations or transportation issues. Zoom has actually been something that's been good for a lot of people. We're also looking at a housing issue coming this spring, because when people lost jobs and got hours cut, they still needed to pay rent. And when the moratorium was up, now we've got landlords that need money and people that don't have jobs. And so neighborhood services has led some teams that are looking at resources and legal help for tenants, because we need to be advocates for each other. We need to give voice. And so we found that addressing some of the shortfalls and really trying to ensure that everyone has equal access to resources and knowledge of the resources that are out there. Because early on, we had parents that were still going to work, but their daycares were closed. We had families that had sick family members and trying to manage what that looks like. We got involved in that too. And with the arts, we started a digital series. And so we have our artists come in and they shoot their live set. And that's actually worked out well for the festival too, because live, you get your show right there and it's done. We've been able to expose the world to the talent that's in Waterloo. I think that's awesome, because people were able to do their sets here and send it to their aunts in LA and their friends overseas and all of that. And it's wonderful to have that light shine back on Waterloo. So while COVID hit us hard, I've been impressed with the resiliency of my city. And I have been encouraged by the way that we've been able to not only change how we operate, but even excel and reach more people. So we've still been thinking growth. We're still bringing new neighborhood associations online. That's still happening. We brought on 3 new neighborhoods since COVID started because people had time to go on walks in their neighborhood and walk around their neighborhood and be like, maybe we should get some lights here or a tree here. This seems weird. Or is Miss Jones still alive? All of those questions happened when people had time. And so I think that for neighborhood services and for North End, the forced slowdown gave people a lot of time to think about, what am I doing? What can I do? What should I do? And I think it's been great because I've been seeing what people can do when they've got just some time to think about it and time to send out a few Facebook posts, a few emails to see if people want to chat. So, and perhaps I'm just an optimistic person and I'm like, COVID, schmovid, we got this. But I feel that organizations that don't move and adapt will die. And so I felt like it was a good shot in the rear for all of us to say, how do we function in this? How do we survive this? And how do we prosper in this? And I've been proud of both neighborhood services and North End for seeing this as an opportunity to do something different.
I agree. I think your comments really echoed Brad's comments at the last question about our community and being vibrant in the growth and how we've nurtured it and how we've, even though COVID was, a negative, we've found some great positives and really sustaining and growing our community. So, Brad, do you want anything additional you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think Felicia said, she actually quoted what we keep saying now. It's our mantra now is, we got this. We got this. We'll figure it out. That's what I've seen everybody try to do in the last year. So how we prepared, actually as an agency, divine intervention, I'm not sure, but about a year before this all started, we received a federal grant to build in telehealth to our school-based health clinics. So we were actually just switching over a year ago in January when all this hit, so that we were prepared to work with students remotely, without even knowing any of this was on the horizon. So it's been interesting to see how that's worked, because it's evolved, especially with young folks. The young people, they're so used to just picking up their phone and using them. And especially now for mental health, because we've seen mental health now, the stress levels of people are really starting to ramp up. And we're seeing it in the mental health visits that we have. We've actually been able to almost double the number of students that we work with because we're using telehealth. Sometimes the students, they just need 5-10 minutes. It doesn't need to be an hour-long session. They just need somebody to talk with for just a few minutes. And so we were already set up to do that. Part of it then too is that there's no charge for any of these services. We're doing the same thing at Hawkeye too. Hawkeye has always felt that it was so important that we don't bill insurance, that we want this to be open to everybody, regardless of income or anything, where they live, anything like that. And so all of the services that we've ever had, if they come on board with us, they have to provide those services. They can get insurance and those types of things are possibly billed, but there's no cost to the students. And so that's how we've reached out to everybody. And our numbers have grown and really impacting a lot more lives because of it. And Felicia just said it right too. We've got this. We've been really creative in how all of these services are reaching more and more students than we were when we were in person.
Thank you. Todd, do you want to share on that question?
Yeah, what I'd like to say is that I agree with Felicia from the standpoint this has been an opportunity for us to look at different delivery models for education and training for our college to different groups and organizations. And it's really been effective, particularly with our online programs. This spring, almost every one of our online courses have been filled. So we know that students are taking advantage of those opportunities to work on that. But it's also given us opportunity to take advantage of information. I don't know the exact name of it, but I know it came out of Des Moines, where I think it was the Central Iowa United Way, where they were talking about diversity in education, and I participated in that. And every week I would get, a video message or information or reading and articles, and it was so much more dynamic. The variety of media that people were using nowadays to engage learners in their education. Even for me, it was very, very exciting, that standpoint, to understand where we could go and what we could do. So I think I see this more as an opportunity moving forward in providing more options. But it also pinpoints some of the difficulties that we have. Matter of fact, in our district, Hawkeye Community College is a larger district that not only encompasses Waterloo, but also encompasses rural areas. And this is where rural and urban actually struggle, from the standpoint that we had to provide hotspots for students. We had to provide computers for students. We had to give them access. We had to help them. We were having the same troubles that a student may have broadband issues in Waterloo. We're having broadband issues in rural Iowa. And I always talk about there's more similarities between us than differences, and that we need to come together and realize that and work on the issues together. Increasing access for us was buying 100 hotspots and giving them out to students. It was buying 100 computers and giving them out to students. It was making sure that we opened up our Wi-Fi and had access so that students could use it whenever they wanted. So I think that all of those things are very, very positive for us as a community, and I mean a broader community going forward. I agree with Felicia. I think the opportunities are going to be enhanced from COVID. I don't see it as a complete distraction, but I see it as an opportunity moving forward.
Thank you. David, do you want to share?
Sure. I think, like everyone's pointed out at this point, if nothing else, COVID has caused all of us to realize that we need to be flexible and adapt to whatever it is that we're dealt with, we're asked to deal with. So in that regard, I think it's probably a good thing. I also hope that as a community, we continue to look at this as we come out of this, and hope that we realize that sometimes disruption creates opportunities as well as challenges. And I hope that we continue to have the mindset of how do we take advantage of those opportunities. That's kind of more just a global statement there. In terms of our organization, the things that we've tried to do is to help not only our residential tenants, but also our business. We have a lot of small business tenants as well. And, it requires, fortunately, we're able to be flexible. But the other thing that we've tried to do for those that we see that are having some difficulties is highlight and direct them towards programs that are there to help. For example, the state has had a rental assistance program for a good share of this time. So, try to point folks that have those needs to those things. Now, we can't do it for them, but we can certainly try to direct them to those resources. And that's same true for the small businesses that we work with as well, to try to get them to take advantage of the resources that are there. So.
Thank you. Shifting gears just a little bit, but it connects to a comment that was made earlier in our session about connection and building a community. So How do you maintain a high level of connectivity and collaboration while working on complex topics? And especially in the moments that we're in right now where we're physically separated and doing everything through Zoom or Google Meets or whatever technology tool that we're using to have these types of conversations. So let's start with Brad.
You know, it would have been interesting if this had happened 20 years ago or even 15 years ago, how it would be different, but we've got so many communication tools now. So I tried to dig underneath all of that, you know, where in terms of connectivity, you know, that hasn't been really an issue. I think, as the others have mentioned, I think the school districts and everyone's tried to get into everybody's hands the ability so they can connect. You know, I know Verizon and AT&T have put out all of those, you know, free hotspots and all that type of thing for students or low income who can't afford those, you know, having a broadband, whatever it might be. But as you dig underneath it, I think what's making it work the best is that, one, we've all been very flexible, that was mentioned, but we've also given each other a lot of grace. There's been a whole lot of grace extended to each other through this, and patience. I think it's bringing out that side of everybody. I've seen people slowing down. And because of the communication, we've also had to filter out and evaluate what truly is important and just deal with those higher level things. And some of the other stuff miraculously has just kind of vanished. The stuff we were dealing with that was just getting in the way of all this important stuff that we need to do. It was kind of clogging it up. So that's what I've seen through this whole thing and how we've dealt with it, just from an observational perspective. The communication tools are there. And it's just really, like I mentioned, I've seen so much grace given to people during this time.
That is important. David, do you want to share?
I'm sorry, remind me of the question.
No, you're good. You're good. So how do we maintain a high level of connectivity and collaboration while working on complex topics, despite the increased physical separation that we've encountered?
It's a challenge, right? So I think obviously in some ways, I will say, for example, if we've got to have meetings, it's now easier to schedule meetings than it was before because you're not asking people to physically arrive for things. And, you know, in some respects, and to maybe Felicia's point earlier and Brad's point, that people's schedules, even at this point, still seem relatively more open than they maybe perhaps were prior to this. But though that's changing somewhat at this point. But, you know, I think I'm one of the people who I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to be back in person with folks, right? I think there's something to be said for connection, to sit across the table from somebody or be in the same room with them. And, you know, and so we've made it work. I think in some ways it's made some things easier, but in other ways, the depth of connection perhaps is still missing a bit. And so I'm looking forward to getting back to that.
I was going to say, I like being in the same room with Felicia. She's got a lot of energy. I mean, you walk into a room with Felicia and man, she's smiling and there's energy. I want to be there. So I agree with David from that standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. Her energy is contagious.
That's scary. I think that we would be remiss if we didn't also speak about what was happening during this COVID time. We had a civil rights situation, historic civil rights situation. It was global, okay? And so you look at COVID, and then you have civil rights, you have justice, you have talks of police reform, you have marches, you have all of this in a contentious election year. Like I don't think that in a talk about Martin Luther King that we can skip over. There was like history happening too And low key, I think that what brought some of that down was the fact that we couldn't be together, that we couldn't. Can you imagine how contentious some rooms would have been? No, like seriously, like I look at the comments on some of our websites, on some of the news stories, and all I was thinking is, thank God we're not all in the same room. Like, thank God this conversation isn't happening in person. As a diversity trainer, looking at how communication, when it's limited and when it's distanced, it can be more venom filled and it can be more aggressive, more unforgivable, because people say things that they wouldn't say to your face that they'll type. And so the communication that I've had to focus on is positive communication, is inspiring communication, is understanding another person's style of communication. I feel like technology, while it has helped us connect, it's also built the structures that divide us, as far as the vehement talk and the Facebook posts and the memes and the this and that. So just as this time has allowed some people to grow and flourish and plant flowers and be active, it's given others time to comment and say things and be those people. So coming out of COVID and working through some of the equity and justice things, the communication piece is going to be the thing that I watch, because we have gotten into this last 8 months of, I'm going to say whatever I think. I'm going to say what I feel, because that's how I feel it, and I'm going to say it. I don't care. So I don't have to see anybody, so I don't care. I'm not going to see them in their face. But those feelings are going to stay the same. And so communication has been both a rose and a thorn. You know what I mean? And I feel like sometimes we underestimate grossly what reconvening looks like. Like, I think of Hawkeyes and I think of you and I's, where you've had a student population having dialogue, saying venomous things, but they're not physically together. What does that look like at lunchtime? What does that look like in a dorm? Now that everyone knows how you feel, we're going to need a tremendous amount of healing, not just physically or spiritually, but emotionally too, because COVID and civil rights and politics brought out some stars, but it also brought out some real dark clouds. And so communication and how we use it and the stories that we choose to tell. Every one of us has stories that we can choose to tell. We can choose what the narrative is going to be. So I would encourage everyone to actively choose your narrative. It's easy to be like, this sucks and these people suck and I hate all of this. That's easy. It comes out quick. Trust me, I'm a petty person, and so I can get there quickly. So you have to, it's a conscious choice. Equity, diversity, love, faith, hope, they're conscious choices. So I would challenge everyone seeing this. We are going to need you to make the conscious choice of a positive narrative. And scene.
No, Felicia, I appreciate that. I know that wasn't one of our questions, but I would just want to hear people's opinions of how do we, after the year of 2020, how do we build those relationships and those connections after we've seen the positive and the negative of people? Like what are your thoughts on our plans? Todd, I think you're off mute, so I'm gonna pick you first.
Yeah, it's great that Felicia talked about this. I just sent out a communication to the entire college that talks about working together for a better community, and dealing with the major civil rights discussion, the election, the COVID, the economic poverty that's exploded in the country has really caused us to stop and think and inquire about how we can make our community more understanding, more compassionate, and more supportive of each other. And, if you would have asked me, would I ever thought that I would have to send out an email to the entire college that talks about, demonstrating a commitment to bring positive change and growth and quality of life to our communities and working together, and realizing that, this last year has deeply saddened me on many occasions. And I have probably been more vocal than I have been before. There was a Black Lives Matter march on our campus, and I was asked to speak at that. And I eagerly did, because I think our students were hungry for that discussion and for that understanding and for that compassion. And I think that I'm very proud of what we did as communities in addressing some of these things, but we're just scratching the surface. There's more we can do. There's more we can come together to support each other. And I think that in looking at Hawkeye Community College, it's important that we become a beacon light for every potential student, for every potential business, for the training that can occur at all levels of our economy, and helping to create that not only racial inclusion, but also that economic inclusion, and that needs to happen. And I think this last year has dramatically shown that we have come a ways, but there are ways we need to go to be more inclusive in addressing equity and equality in our communities.
Yep, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Felicia's point's right about the fact that the sitting behind our computer screens creates a false sense of distance from people that, for whatever reason, gives a lot of people to say things they wouldn't otherwise say or more likely to. And that's, I think, unfortunate, which is, I'll come back to my point of we need to be back in person when we can be, right, safely. Because, again, like, and to Todd's point, I think the question has been raised about justice, not only economic, but other. But if we stopped today, we'll have changed really nothing much, unfortunately. I think real change, I mean, not nothing, but not enough. That's what I want to say, is because we haven't. I was reading an article actually from Dr. King that he wrote in 1966. It was in The Nation. And essentially, he pointed out the fact that sometimes there's some discomfort in change. And he wasn't talking about in terms of violence, but in terms of the parties, when they're coming together, there may be some, I don't remember exact words they used, but basically discomfort between. So we have to realize that there's some of that, but it has to be structured within the framework of how do we positively make change happen from that, right? So one of our, I think, for example, going back to the Walnut neighborhood, that's one of the reasons it's so important that we had that community, those existing resident engagement, before we really started trying to make our push within that neighborhood to create, to build on its past, but also include the folks that were already there, but and bring new residents in, and create a stronger neighborhood out of the process. It's, as some would say, the goal is not to go do something to the neighborhood. The goal is to build the neighborhood with the neighborhood, right? And sometimes that's easier said than done, but it's, I think, an important part of it. One other comment I'll make quickly is I'm on the organizing committee for Cedar Valley Pride Fest. And while our focus is on LGBTQ population with that, the beauty of that event, so that within our community, is the fact that it draws everyone, right? It draws across ethnic lines, across economic lines, it draws across the larger Cedar Valley area. And I've had, in the 9 years that we've put that event on, I'm always excited when I hear people say after the fact that perhaps people have never been, that they're not part of the community directly, who say, you know what I really liked about your event is the fact that it was comfortable, right? People came together of all different walks and backgrounds and were in one place, and it felt comfortable to everybody that was there. And I think that's the goal, that we should get towards, continue to work towards that comfort. We're going to have some bumps along the way, but if we don't work on it, nothing's going to be different.
I agree. Brad, did you want to share any comments?
Yeah, just quickly, just a couple of thoughts on that as well. Yeah, I think part of it is we've lost community a little bit with the distance. It's been long enough now. You know, when you look back and when this first thing started, everybody was, you know, we're in this together. We can do this together, and that's slowly been fading. And we've seen the eruptions from that disconnect from each other. And yeah, just like everybody else, you know, it's easy to be a keyboard warrior when you're not talking to anybody, and it's so easy to be uncivil when you're not right in front of everybody. But I've also lived long enough to know that there's a lot of friction before change happens. And given the amount of friction, we should be in for some big change. You know, hopefully we're in for a lot of change if you measured by the friction that's been occurring. But in any situation, you know, change just doesn't happen on its own. Typically, something strokes a fire or something happens. And so we've all been keenly aware of that in the news, and not only in our country, but worldwide right now. There's a bubble up right now of change that's occurring. And so you know, I hold an optimistic view, is that things will change for the better, based on what's been happening up to this point.
Thank you. I really appreciate the conversation. Being in HR, I know we've talked about the how do we get people back together, but I don't think we've thought about the emotional well-being and stability of bringing everyone back together. So I appreciate this conversation. It has me thinking a little bit differently on what reentry really looks like when we add all of the compounding factors together. So thank you. I know we're getting close to time, and I really want to talk about like the future. So, you know, you've all shared just a ton of information, a wealth of knowledge for myself, some things I've jotted down for myself to start taking some action on. But how would you envision the future? Like, what are some things that we can start to do, you know, 30 days from now, 60, 90, to, you know, really help progress our community, keep it vibrant, and keep it growing? So David, I'll start with you.
And here I was hoping I would have a little time to think about that, but I know it was one of our questions that you've provided to us. But, you know, I think as I mentioned earlier, I think we need to view this as an opportunity, right? And communities that invest in themselves, not only financially, but in other ways, are ones that are going to, you know, as they say, sow the seeds for the future, right? if we don't do things now, I'll give an example of one small little thing that we're working on in the Walnut neighborhood as an example. And we worked with our landscape architects, Ritland and Kuiper, in the Walnut neighborhood to develop a tree plan, for the Walnut neighborhood specifically, because here's how I look at it is when I look at the most successful neighborhoods in our community, there's tree-lined streets, right? Now, it doesn't seem like a major thing, and there's lots of reasons. It's green, it's energy efficient, but ultimately it feels like someone cares about the neighborhood. And I think taking the steps to make sure that it looks like people care about their neighborhoods, and most people do, and maybe don't know what to do, but we're working towards making sure that trees based on this plan that was developed to, get installed as resources allow. But spring's a great time to plant trees. And, that's one little thing that we can do to help people feel good about where they live. And I think feeling good about where you live is a key part of happiness, I think. So there I've managed to connect trees and happiness. So there you go.
Hey, it works. It works. Todd, you want to go next?
Yeah, one of the great things that has occurred over the last year during the pandemic and the civil rights movement and the economic fallout has been the fact that Hawkeye Community College has created a new vision, new mission, and new strategies for itself. And it was all pretty much done electronically, and we had over 350 people participating in the process and giving us feedback and knowledge and information. And one of the great things connected with Dr. King's dream was that repeatedly, over and over again, we heard that one of our top strategies should be to commit to creating a culture where everyone is respected, appreciated, and valued. And so that's one of our strategies. That's one of our 3 top strategies. And then we'll have initiatives in students, businesses, communities, and internally to connect with that strategy. And I was really optimistic and excited that so many people would say that this is important for our communities and for Hawkeye Community College to address and to be part of the process of working together to create changes and growth and positive communities. And so I think that's very, very exciting that people acknowledge it. I think people understand the Wall Street article that came out in 2018. They understand the civil rights events that occurred this past year, and they still said, this is important for Hawkeye, and Hawkeye needs to be engaged in the process of bringing communities and people together.
It's going to keep going right down my line. So Brad.
Yeah, I guess when I look at, if we look into the next 30, 60, 90 days, what it takes, to keep our community, our already vibrant community, even more vibrant, how to keep it going. I guess what really comes to my mind is to continue to respond, to look back. Now, don't forget the past, but also look forward at the same time and really keep that vision forward. Obviously, communication. And I guess when I think of communication at this point, I mean, healthy communication, positive communication. There's so much communication out there. And the needle is dipping towards the negative side on so much of it, but to raise that needle and keep it positive and to keep planning and moving forward that way. I think the biggest thing is to continue to believe. If you lose hope, all the other things don't matter if you don't have the hope. And I think that's what Dr. King, hope was in his DNA. That's all there is to it. He saw what was possible and he just kept forward to it. And that's the contagious part of it, is that hope. Dread and fear, that it's easy to latch onto that, but that hope is really where you've got to place it and move forward with that.
And ending with Felicia, what words of wisdom can you give us?
I was at Wartburg. I sang at Christmas with Wartburg, and we had a closing song, and it was like, what can I give him, poor as I am? If I were a shepherd, I would bring a lamb. If I was a wise man, I would do my part. But what I have, I give him. I give the babe my heart. And so I ask, what are you going to give? Because you have something. If it's not money, it might be time. If it's not time, it may be some old shoes or old clothes. It may be something. So I want to ask, what are you going to give? What can you do? And that's on the neighborhood side. On the north end side, we focus a lot on children's dreams and fostering dreams in kids, but we act like adults don't dream and adults don't want to do something else or had a hope of doing something else. Adults dream too. We get so hung up on Dr. King's dream, the dream itself, versus what motivated him was the fact that he had a dream. And so that it was a dream. We all love what his dream was, but what motivated him was he had a dream. And so I would say moving forward, to encourage us all to dream. What is your dream? What is your dream for yourself? What is your dream for your family? And what is your dream for your city? And if you chase those, your dream is going to effectively change the world, because it's going to change your world. And we're all a piece of this. And so when I think of King, I think of the dream, but I think of dreamers. And if we had a whole town of folks that were believing in dreams and following and pushing their passions, that's what can change. And so I believe that it's an internal situation, but also identifying that I've got to have a part in this. Let me figure out what it is. I am the potluck queen of bringing the forks, because I ain't cooking at night during the week, but I play my part. I'm in my lane. I figured it out quickly. So I'm saying to everyone, we need napkins. We need invitations, as well as cake and potato salad. What is your role? What are you going to bring? What gifts will you bring?
So I just wrote some hashtags, like hashtag what's your dream, hashtag dreamers. Yes, that is good. I appreciate you ending that session on that. Really, all of you uplifting and sharing your perspectives and pressing forward to build and sustain our vibrant community here in the Cedar Valley. So I want to thank you all for being panelists here tonight and sharing your stories. As we come to a close, I didn't know if anyone had any parting thoughts. You're good? Okay. So
Thank you.
No, yes.
Thank you.
No, thank you. We want to thank all of our viewers for watching and supporting us through this week of events. We need all of you, all of us, all of our community to continue these conversations and figuring out what can we bring to the picnic. So thank you. Thank you, Felicia. Just a reminder that you can see all of the evening sessions and Monday's breakfast session on the Believe Waterloo Facebook page. And we want to thank you for joining, and good night.